Welcome back to Liberty or Death. Today we're going to check out some of these Minneapolis and St. Paul riots. I wanted to point out a few things I don't think other people have pointed out. So let's get this started. This is from the other day. I think the Washington Post. I think it's the New York Post. It is the New York Post, my bad. So, a lot of people think they want to say that these are protests, not riots. Well, this is incorrect. So, the key difference on protest and riot is that you cannot impede other people's First Amendment rights. You cannot impede on law enforcement, federal or state or county for that matter. You cannot do things like this lady here is doing. She gets out and says, "Oh, I'm trying to get to the doctor." She's clearly not. She's clearly blocking the road. She has been at this point for hours of the day. So, and there's people like this doing it like this good situation. You can't, get law enforcement and expect that to go well. So, all of this happening with all the whistles and all the bells, they're simply trying to distract, trying to get under the skin of the federal officers. Their whole mission is to basically not only warn the illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, I don't like to call them immigrants because it gives a false impression, a warning, but also they think it will just drive federal agents crazy and they just want to leave, which will not happen. But like I say, that's a key difference. In a protest, this kind of stuff will not happen. They will still end up the way of law enforcement. They will have their voices heard, but legally, not impeding, not running amok on everybody else's rights, including law enforcement, of course. The other thing I want to talk about, which is important, I haven't heard many people talk about it, is in the federal government and in the Constitution of the United States, there is a federal supremacy clause. Any law that is made in a state that is not conducive with the law of the federal government, that means that the federal government can come into that state, and no matter what that state law is, the federal government's law will supersede that. So a good example of that is marijuana. Marijuana started to become legal in a few states like Colorado, California, etc. Several years ago, and it was still deemed illegal federally. So the federal government, if a federal officer or president or Congress decided to go into that state and arrest everybody who owned a marijuana shop, who sold weed, who used weed, whatever, they could do that legally. Would it cause a very strong kickback? Yeah, but they could legally do that and shut down every portion of that business in that state. President Trump recently signed a bill legalizing medical marijuana and a few other things. So that part of it is not really important at this point, but it is a good example as to how, states begin to pass laws that will eventually become federal law. Marijuana was getting there, but that's just a good example of it. So, just like in this situation, the federal government can come in and these cities and states who are quote-unquote sanctuaries for illegal aliens. They're not. The federal government can come in and do whatever they please because federal law supersedes state law, period. End of story. Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz, all these interesting governors will say they can talk and they can bluster all they like, but federal government does supersede the state. So President Trump can come in with the National Guard, federalize the National Guard, which he's already done in California, and protect federal buildings. They can't come in, the military, in specifics, the military can't come in and say, we're enforcing the laws, but he can federalize, the president or Congress can federalize state troopers. They can federalize county sheriffs. They can federalize the entire state government if they please with either the Insurrection Act or the Supremacy Clause. Like I say, if someone like Tim Walz is doing right now completely undermines the federal government and basically calls for violence, the president can come in and federalize that state. He doesn't even need to use the Insurrection Act, although it makes it easier, more efficient, straightforward. There will be blowback for this, of course, just like there has been now. But the difference then is the president would be able to basically scoot aside any lawmakers in that state and say, this is what's happening, this is what you do. If there's protesters or rioters, which is what these people are, you simply arrest them. You don't play their games. If they're on the street, they get arrested, along with all the illegals, and that's what would solve this. Many people, including myself, wishes he would invoke the Insurrection Act. But I think too many people just don't understand what the actual Constitution has to say. I'll start this back as I wrap this up. But and just like the Second Amendment, if the federal government wanted to enforce the Second Amendment in every state, they could come in and do that and make concealed carry law of the land, which I also wish they would. But of course, they get a lot of pushback, a lot of legal pushback. But the federal supremacy law says that they can do that, and it would be legal. So, as we see here, there are people who think that they're protesting, but they're not, and they're rioters, just like this lady just. If you heard that again, what she's saying, a lot of them are wishing death and harm upon federal agents, and this normally would be arrestable offense, but the federal agents are all they have right now because the law enforcement will not assist them in Minnesota, and that is a shame, and it's, quite frankly, it's not America. This is the third world, and this is the reason why we have to crack down now, because this cannot become the norm. So, anyway, again, thank you to the post for this clip. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please leave any comments, any statements. Let me know what you think. We'll see you in the next one. I'm your Huckleberry.